We have a tiny bit of business. April is our meeting where we elect officers and board members. And last meeting, the slate that the nominating committee came up with was already announced. It was myself as president, Dolores Julian as vice president, Janet as secretary, Shar, Taylor, and Lori Cruz as co-treasurers, Judy O'Laughlin as board of directors, Terry Landsider, board of directors, Siobhan Sladen, board of directors. I now open the meeting to any nominations from the floor. Having no nominations from the floor, the election will proceed. Oh, the floor is now closed, I'm supposed to say. I had instructions from, yes. The election will proceed.
I move that the candidates on the slate be elected.
Is there a second? Okay, it has been moved and seconded that the candidates that were put forth by the nominating committee be elected. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposition? All right, then we are all re-elected. Okay. Siobhan.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn this over to you. Why don't you come around here?
Okay.
Because apparently we're working from the interior.
All right.
Do you at this time also want,
Yes.
talk about next meeting, but I'm going to say let's wait till after his speech because he has another place to go, so let's do it after.
You have another place to go.
And then a wife that wants me home now.
Well, you are speaking to a lot of wives in here. We've got it.
All right.
We'll even let you bring her a cookie home. This is Dr. David Smith, and he is CEO of the Mojave Air and Spaceport. He comes at this, he has a background, he entered into the Air Force in 1982. He flew B-52s. He served in the Armored Cavalry Regiment and deployed to combat duty in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. And so for those of us who have had contact with Joey Pratty, who also served in Iraq, and we've had lots of history connection with that. So our audience will appreciate that. He is, like I said, the CEO of the Mojave Air and Spaceport, which has over 3,300 acres out there, and they are doing the latest, the greatest, the most advanced aeronautical designs. They have a rich history in and of itself, and Dr. Smith has just been wonderful. I have pestered the poor man to no end, and apparently I could pester him more than his wife did because he caved and came in for a little bit. And so without any further ado, we will let you get started. So.
Tell me, I'm a large, loud talker. If I speak like this, can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
So if you can't hear me, raise your hand. Yeah, okay. Thank you for that humbling introduction. Seriously. I've been asked to talk a little about the Mojave Air and Spaceport, and I'd be more than pleased to do that, but there's a problem there, and that's that it's the little town of Mojave and a little spaceport in the middle of the Mojave Desert, and nothing happens there. So it's a little hard to talk about nothing happening there. So I thought I'd take us on a different journey and talk about some people that I really respect, my parents. And maybe we'll get to talking more about nothing happening at Mojave. So with nothing happening there, let me just start you with this. So like I said, nothing happens there. A day in the life of Mojave Airport, but I hate to refer to me because that glorious introduction that I was provided, thank you for that, really isn't about me. It's the people that I've been surrounded by. It's the people that have lifted me up. It's about a family that gave me some guidance and values early in life. So I thought I'd tell some stories, and I will tell you a couple of those stories have a history of choking me up. So I'm sorry, I'm an emotional person, and that might very well happen. But one was a story of an immigrant from Belarus that was living in Baltimore named Teresa Seluzicki. And Teresa Seluzicki was second generation. Her parents actually emigrated from Russia because they were czarists. They were white Russians. And they had actually been captured. And they made this decision on the way to a gulag on a train in the middle of nowhere that this is really gonna suck to stay on this train. So they jumped off and they managed to work their way to Germany, where in 1918, with the First World War going on, they were able to book passage to Baltimore. And they settled in Baltimore, and their daughter, Teresa, joined the United States Army during the Second World War and became an Army nurse anesthetist. And she was a battlefield nurse in the European theater, where on a fluke at the end of the war, a soldier named Gene Smith came in and was diagnosed with diphtheria. And the doctor in charge locked down the field hospital and said, this hospital's under quarantine. So they were quarantined together, they fell in love, and Teresa Seluzicki became Teresa Smith. Gene Smith is my father. He was a soldier in Patton's Third Army that had something to do with the relief of some town called Bastogne, that I guess was kind of important back then. But those people had unique values. Those values and commitments that some of us share and maybe some of us don't, and that's okay. The beauty of this wonderful country is we don't have to do a lot of things. We can do a lot of things if that's what we want to do. Teresa, just before she deployed in the Baltimore and DC area, entered kind of what we would call today America's Got Talent. She loved to sing, she loved to dance, she just was a free-spirited young woman, and very attractive. Well, she won the competition, and the prize was a trip to Hollywood, California for a screen test. How cool was that, right? You know, you're a young woman in Baltimore and no ties. You're a second generation immigrant family. You're gonna go to Hollywood for a screen test. And what did she do? She turned it down because she's a soldier and she's a nurse, and we were in combat in Europe and she had to go to war. And soldiers maybe lived or died because of her care. I will tell you this about Mom. She would never talk about the horrors of combat. All she would say is the toughest job of an Army nurse is holding a soldier's hand on his vital mission. And you know, those values, though, they taught me were strong. Dad was a career soldier. The world, as we know, has changed. It's probably still not perfect, but it's a little better. When they married in 1946 in Nuremberg, Germany, my mother was called in by her commander and informed that she had to resign her commission because her job now was not to be a lieutenant or an anesthetist or a nurse. Her job was to be an Army wife. That was her job. And she was a little bitter about that, and that she carried for a long time. She did go back into nursing as a civil servant many years later, and actually back in Hawaii, she was the regional flight nurse for the FAA when she retired. So she had that opportunity to go back, but she set a standard of excellence in the household along with my father, and that military culture that I think helped establish a pathway for a child that could have been a little wayward. So when I was 27, I had been 3 years a worker for a company some of you might have heard of called Jack Daniel's Distillery. I was a visual merchandising marketing agent for them in Hawaii. This is where you say it's a tough job, but somebody's got to do it, right? They get bought out by a company called Brown Forman. They go through a downsizing. I get a phone call saying, hey, we love you, you're a great employee, but the likelihood is your position's going to go away. So you might want to start looking for work come the end of the fiscal year. Now, I'm careful to not proselytize, but I'll tell you I do believe that there are powers out there that work in mysterious ways, and sometimes it's our job to listen to them. And that day I walked to the mailbox and there was a little brochure that simply said aim high. So I picked up the phone and I joined the United States Air Force. Went off to flight school, flew B-52s, wound up coming back and having the opportunity to go to flight test. And a dream of a child in Hawaii being raised by a military family who was chasing in National Geographic these crazy people that in the high deserts of California were flying something called the X-15, higher and faster than anybody had ever flown in history, impressed me. And I finally got to touch that. And I felt strangely very complete. So I received a call from my personnel center saying that the commander of, at that time, the 419th Flight Test Squadron here, a gentleman named Arnie Bunch, who later became 4-star General Arnie Bunch, running Air Force Materiel Command. Well, Arnie Bunch put in a by-name request for me to do flight tests at Edwards. Center friend, that I actually couldn't take that position because it required me to be a test pilot school graduate. And I had not gone to test pilot school. My vector was different. And he said, we've got that all worked out. We're sending you to a place called National Test Pilot School in Mojave, California. And you're gonna get your test pilot school certification and you're gonna come down and run the B-52 Avionics Midlife Improvement Program. Well, at that time when we did that program, the B-52 was 50 years old. So DOD, who never makes a mistake, has defined what middle age is. It's 50. Because the midlife improvement program on a B-52 started when it was 50. By the way, that airplane now is over 70 years old. We're gonna fly it another 30 or 40 years with the modernizations we're doing. And our sons and daughters will continue to redeem the assets of our investment in the past. I flew with a gentleman several years ago that was a 3rd generation B-52 pilot. His father and his grandfather both flew the B-52. That airplane is going to be one of the mainstays of our National Bomber Force. The B-52 and the B-21 will be our two bombers. We're retiring the B-1s and B-2s. It's amazing to think what we can do with technology that really is actually rooted way back in the Second World War that I was just talking about. One of the reasons the B-52 or similar aircraft was first designed is the theory that if we lost England, we'd have to be able to prosecute targets in Europe from the United States. And how could we do that? Well, we could develop an airplane to do that. So that experience here was laudable. I wound up retiring from active duty. I did accept a guard commission. I'm still a guardsman in California. And I'm humbled to be able to serve as what we call a traditional. I'm one of those weekend guys, one weekend a month. I put the uniform on. My wife corrects me. She says, since you've been promoted, you're home one weekend a month. That's not being gone one weekend. So I'm honored to be able to do that. I was a senior civilian. Actually, I was a senior civilian at Edwards for quite a while. And then I had the opportunity to go down to this place in Palmdale, some of you might have heard of, called Plant 42. And I ran Plant 42 for about 6 years. And with complete respect to the people in the United States Air Force, the Department of War, Plant 42, Lockheed, Northrop, Boeing, all great people, my frustration level in dealing with the bureaucracy of the federal government and trying to push programs faster, cheaper, better, because my job was to produce combat capability for our warfighters. And you know, my fear was, if I didn't deliver combat capability in time, some warfighter, some son or daughter of a mother and father in this country is not going to come running off the backside of that C-17 into loved one's arms, but be carried off by 6 of their new best friends. And that was untenable to me. So as I fought that fight of trying to do this more efficiently, I had the rare opportunity to be considered for the position as CEO of the Mojave Air and Spaceport. And I thought, you know what? It's time to make a change. And I've been so honored and humbled to go up there and be a partner with that little location where nothing happens at all at. It's just Mojave. It's a little town of 3,000 people, about 80% on welfare, about 40% below the poverty line. And nestled up against that town is 3,300 acres of aerospace excellence. So let's talk a little about the history of that place where nothing happens at. I want to take you back to the Second World War. A Marine detachment is at Mojave, training aviators in water survival skills and fighter pilot skills that are going to deploy to the Pacific Theater and fight the Japanese. One of those trainees was a guy named Pappy Boyington. Pappy Boyington was the commander of what was called the Black Sheep Squadron and a Medal of Honor winner. I find it interesting that Pappy Boyington did part of his training at Mojave, because a generously kind way to refer to him is to say he's cavalier. He didn't understand the Navy and the Marine Corps had a rule book. And what happened is there were a lot of pilots in the Pacific Theater that kind of felt that way. They were always in trouble. But the fact was they were darn good pilots. And they decided to stick them all together and give them to this sort of renegade guy called Pappy Boyington, and the Black Sheep Squadron was formed. And it became the most effective squadron in the Pacific Theater in the Second World War. But they did get in a lot of trouble a lot. Well, why is that similar to Mojave? Not that we get in a lot of trouble, but my motto, our motto at Mojave is permission granted. So you want to do something, permission granted. You want to take the boom aircraft at Mojave and go from first flight to 8 supersonic sorties in 4 months, permission granted. So first flight to 8 supersonic sorties in 4 months. Let's talk about that for just a second. When I got to, and please, there's a lot of other variables here. It's not just one versus the other. When I got to Plant 42 8 years ago, we had a system being worked on called X-59, the low boom demonstrator. A combined program between Lockheed Martin and NASA, all great people, great system. 6 years later, when I left, it hadn't flown yet. A year and a half later, I'm at Mojave. It does its first flight. It goes from Plant 42 all the way to Edwards Air Force Base, almost 30 miles. Good for them. In that spirit of time, boom showed up at Mojave, very similar, not identical technology. Flew for 4 months, broke the speed of sound 8 times, put all their data in a box, retired the aircraft, and they're in production. So I want to ask you a question. What's better if you're in the business of producing aircraft, 4 months or 6.5 years? Right? So I think the reason we do that, I guarantee you we're not unsafe, because I oversee that every day. I will insist upon a safe and effective environment. But when we take some of the regulation out of the way, when we take some of the bureaucracy out of the way, when we take some things that I used to have to do on a day-to-day basis, I would take this folder, I'd review it, I'd put my signature on the bottom, so it could go to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, get reviewed, and have somebody put their signature on the bottom. So it could go to Washington, D.C., get reviewed, and somebody would put their signature on the bottom. So it would go to Northrop Grumman Corporation, get reviewed, and put your signature on the bottom. And somewhere along the line, somebody found out that, you know, you said happy here, but I would have really preferred glad. So why don't you start over? You know, it's an exaggeration, obviously, but we take that bureaucracy out of the process in this open environment of Mojave Air and Spaceport. So I want you to think a little about this thing called Mojave. I want you to think about Pappy Boyington getting in his F-4U Corsair in 1942. And he pushes those throttles up and he starts thundering down the runway with that deep guttural roar coming out of that engine in the front of that airplane, that big radial engine. And as he gets to about 30 or 40 knots, something strange happens. And the plane suddenly turns into Voyager. And here we have this aircraft piloted by Dick Rutan, with Jeannie Yeager by his side, that is going to take off and only fly all the way around the world unrefueled. I had the honor of being at Dick's interment at Arlington National Cemetery a few months ago. And at his celebration of life, one of the things that was said was from one of the engineers that was in the control room when he took off at Edwards. And he said he will never forget the transmission from the tower to the aircraft. Voyager 1, you're cleared Edwards to Edwards, the hard way. And 9 days and 4 minutes later, they land back at Edwards, having circumnavigated the globe without a drop of gas being entered into the airplane. Truly stunning accomplishment. So a few moments go by on that takeoff roll, and now you're getting to the point where you're just about to rotate, and you turn into boom supersonic, and you're accelerating and approaching that capability that can only be delivered by free-spirited people that are very good at what they do. And as you just break ground, strangely, that sleek, fast, beautiful, long supersonic aircraft turns into Rock. Rock, the world's largest wingspan airplane. 6 huge engines, a 385-foot wingspan. Think about that wingspan. If I put the center line of Rock on the middle of a football field, my wings aren't in the end zones, they're in the seats on both sides of the field. And if you look carefully at Rock, as Rock begins to fly away, break contact with the ground, you notice in the center of that aircraft, there's something hanging there. And you realize that's Talon, a hypersonic system. And what we're going to do is we're going to launch Talon in the sea-test ranges by Vandenberg. Talon's going to accelerate to above Mach 5. I can't tell you how far above. Now, give you an idea of what Mach 5 is. Anybody in here deal with any kind of firearms, rifles? 5, almost double the speed of a 30-06 bullet. Pretty fast. It autonomously lands back at Vandenberg Space Force Base. We put that baby on a truck. We drive it back to Mojave where nothing happens. We clean it up, we refuel it, and we go do it again. So why does that matter? There are areas of technology where the United States, for one reason or another, and please, I'm not making this political, most of these issues are money, but areas where the United States has maybe slipped behind some of our adversaries, our near-peer competitors. One of those is the world of hypersonics. Mojave's fixing that. We're fixing it every day. So why is that hypersonic thing, that hypersonic concept important? Let's go back to that history of the Second World War. There was a general officer, Billy Mitchell, who predicted the Japanese would attack Pearl Harbor at 7:30 in the morning on a Sunday. You know what? He was wrong by 18 minutes. 7:48 was the attack time. Now, he didn't guess that. He studied the adversary. He studied the tides. He studied U.S. techniques. He studied aircraft performance. He studied the growth and development of the aircraft carrier. He studied when our personnel will be most vulnerable. And he was rewarded with a court-martial, later reinstated and promoted. What if Emperor Hirohito, instead of Billy Mitchell, had gone to the press and said, hey, on a Sunday, at 7:30, I'm going to attack Pearl Harbor? Would we have listened? Maybe. Now, I will preface what I'm about to say with this. I have zero issue with the Chinese people. I have zero issue with their phenomenal history, their contributions that have impacted all over the globe. I have an issue with the Chinese Communist Party. And Deng Xiaoping has said publicly, we're taking Taiwan back in 2027. Now, if 2027 is a thing, something we're going to need is parity in the hypersonic world. And we're delivering that parity at a place where nothing happens, called Mojave. So we need to be relevant and viable in many things, and that's what we do at this little air and spaceport. And one of the ways we do that is we make investment in Mojave remarkably attractive. So if you want to put a hangar on my flight line and you want the land to do that, I'm going to be a demanding landlord and I'm going to ask for a nickel a foot. I don't think you're going to find that anywhere. I don't think you're going to find it at the Roseman Airport. You can go off the flight line, you need laydown area without access to the runway. I'll get a little more generous, 2.5 cents a foot. So I can make that attractive to you. And I'll go about a 40 or 50 year lease. We'll make it pretty reasonable so I can keep the FAA off my back. Because nothing happens there, so why worry about it? It's a pretty remarkable little place in a little corner of the desert. One of the things that makes us very special is our neighbors. Roseman, Edwards, Boron, China Lake. This is the center of the aviation universe, right here. And if you go back and you ask me what I think of aviation history, I will tell you from my heart that Kitty Hawk was interesting, but absolutely insignificant. Where aviation grew for the world, not just the United States, is Southern California. And how do I know that? Because that legacy still exists today and we're doing it today. Because I lied. Everything happens at Mojave. So, if you don't mind, I have a few minutes if you'd like questions or comments or want to throw expired fruit at me.
Any questions?
Yes, ma'am.
When you say boom technology, is there a simple way to describe or define that, what you mean?
So Boom was there's a company called Boom, right? And they actually want to build a supersonic airliner. Now, what does X-59 want to do? That program at Palmdale, now up at Anderson. They want to, Armstrong, I'm sorry. They want to also give technology to build an airliner. Their technology is one where the sonic boom will be quiet, so my airliner can now fly over land. By current regulations from the FAA, if I'm flying supersonic, I'm not supposed to be flying over population centers. I can do it over the ocean all I want. But the old supersonic transport, when it approached the coast of New York, it had to slow down to subsonic speeds. Okay? So another version of that was a private enterprise, Boom. Their airliner is called Symphony, the engine combination called Orchestra. And they built a very small variant, single pilot variant of that airplane as a technology demonstrator to prove that it can be done, their technology will work, the airplane will work. They did that at Mojave. And they proved that they're in production in Colorado now on what they hope to be the world's next supersonic airliner. And I like to call supersonic airliners, if you think about it, time travel. Because on your watch with the time zone change, if you took off at New York and you flew to Los Angeles, on your watch you're going to land before you took off. That's pretty cool. Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
What is it about the B-52 that was keep it over the B-2?
So B-2, very small numbers, less than 20 now. That makes building parts for that aircraft very difficult to sustain over the long term. It's a remarkable technology. It's been a remarkable platform. I did a lot of B-2 work while I was in the flight test world. But at the end of the day, what they needed was an aircraft that had very long range, was sustainable, was easy to fix, and I could eventually get the right parts and systems for it. The B-52 has become, excuse me, by current technology, a weapons truck. So what I can do on a B-52 is load a little bit of everything and go out into my theater of combat, and whatever that soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, Guardian, Coast Guardsman, whoever on the ground needs, I can select that weapon and provide it for them. And as long as we control the airspace, I can do that with impunity. Now, if we don't control the airspace, I have the B-21, which will go in invisible and prosecute those targets, so I do control the airspace, then my B-52 can come into action. So we did a test on the B-2 here at Edwards while I was still active duty, so a long time ago. Loading a weapon on it called the Massive Ordnance Penetrator. It's the weapon that was used a few months ago to strike the nuclear facility in Iran. We first dropped that weapon from a B-52, not a B-2, even though it's not a B-52 weapon. But we did that because if we had a problem with that weapon or the airplane or something, if I say dent the doors of a B-2, if that weapon hits the bomb bay doors and dents them, that's probably a Class A mishap. That may cost me $1 million to fix. I dent the bomb bay doors on a B-52. I get a Staff Sergeant Crew Chief out there with a brass hammer. He knocks the dent out and I fly tomorrow. It's reality. The thing's a horse. But I don't have all that low observable, radar absorptive things to worry about. So it's an inexpensive alternative that fits in with our idea of air dominance very well. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Sure. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you mentioned that we were the center of aviation. We get a lot of sonic booms out here, obviously. Is there a certain elevation point where the planes hit supersonic, or?
So we actually have, in very close proximity to Rosemond, and right over Edwards, 2 supersonic corridors where the FAA specifically authorizes pilots to fly supersonic. You know, I'll tell you, having flown supersonic, what's very interesting inside the cockpit is you don't feel a thing. You watch your gauge go from Mach 9.9 to Mach 1. You're supersonic. But on the ground, the big violent shockwave separation from the aircraft that you hear, the big boom. And that is a big boom. And I will compliment, going back to X-59, that our NASA and Lockheed friends coming up with the science of minimizing that is pretty amazing. So a lot of smart people doing cool stuff.
Yeah, Ed Herring in particular.
I'm sorry?
Ed Herring in particular has worked on sonic boom stuff has supported that guy for 2 decades.
That's wonderful.
That is done a lot of shape modeling and rebuilding of F-5s and all that along the way. The sonic boom prediction of where it's going to land and all that stuff.
You know, that X-59 and the Bell and the boom, both look extremely similar. Very narrow bodies, very long noses, recessed cockpit, everything about distributing that shock wave effectively rather than having that rapid separation. Anything else? Sir?
I'm just curious about the SR-71. Growing up, I heard about it before I got acquainted a little bit, and I've heard it a lot, and I've seen where they published 2,000 miles per hour. And I was in Palmdale one time when our business was expanding, and we came across this black piece of paper that had SR-71, and it said 2,000 or 3,000 plus, and that's the first time I'd ever heard that. That was in middle 90s, you know. And has they ever published what the exact max speed of that ever was?
So I don't believe so, and I will tell you, having been actively in an SR-71 unit when I was stationed at Beale Air Force Base, it had been retired once. They brought the SR-71 back for about a year, and then they retired it again. The problem when they brought the SR-71 back is they couldn't get it to data link effectively. So as fast and impressive as that plane was, to get the information off the airplane, I had to land it, and I had to have somebody take physically the package of data off the airplane, like a computer disk. That made that data too old to be useful. The battlefield moves very, very quickly. I've got to get the data in the commander's hands right now. And the U-2, as slow, old, and deliberate as that was, could data link effectively and do that. We never got the SR to do that, and frankly, the SR is also very expensive to fly. But to go back to your core question, since I used to work in that unit, and I don't know if it's declassified, I'm gonna keep my mouth shut. Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Smith, you mentioned that this is all predicated on us controlling the airspace.
Right.
In today's world with drones, what do you see changing?
So the drone is expanding while it's restricting technology. We see everything from the little handheld drones that, and I must admit, you know, when I met my beautiful bride Denise, and she humbled me by having crappy taste in men and looking my way twice. So we just recently celebrated our 13th anniversary, but we're a Brady bunch, so we put 3 plus 3 together. 5 of those 3 plus 3 are young ladies, and then my son. And a couple of my young ladies are laying by, we have a pool in our house in Palmdale, laying by the pool, and I'm hearing this buzzing sound, and darn it, there's a drone checking out my daughters by my pool. You know? So the reality is it's a problem in multiple ways, but in the military lexicon, what I care about when I talk air dominance is a drone that's big enough to shoot me down or to confuse me. And one of the things we're doing with our new program called NGAD, Next Generation Air Dominance, the aircraft that'll likely replace the F-22, that airplane will fly with things called CCA, Conventional Counter Air. So it will fly with kind of a host of expendable aircraft that if it's prosecuting a target that's very deliberate, but very highly defended, I can send in a system that doesn't have a pilot from an airplane that has a pilot that can control it in the theater real time right now. And those technologies are being worked on today at Edwards, at China Lake, at Gray Butte, at El Mirage, and down south for Anderal airspace. So that drone technology is taking this to a different level. So rather than necessarily own the airspace, I will just send in assets that if I lose 1 or 2, that's okay because I'm bringing my people home. Anything else? Have I run out of time? Am I?
No, you're fine, but I know you have something else to do. So I think everybody, we really appreciate, this is amazing, so thank you.
It's an absolute honor to be with y'all. It is. And I'm passionate about the men and women I work with. My job is to run Mojave Air and Spaceport today, but I do it based on my past. And I'm very serious. I take that past back to a mom and dad that fought for this country in the Second World War. And I'll leave you, if you don't mind, with one quick comment. When I wound up joining the Air Force at that tender young age of 27, I'm out at officers training school, and I'm actually thinking I'm gonna make it. I'm about a week short of commissioning. And I called my father, who was drafted in the Second World War, but wound up staying in, got a battlefield commission. I know Dad never saw a day of college. I doubt that he ever graduated high school, but it was a different time. And he was a good soldier, so he got commissioned, and he wound up staying in the Army, making that a career, retired as a major. And I called him as I'm about to commission, and I said, Dad, what do I do to be a success as an officer? And he fired back instantly at me. He said, you surround yourself with outstanding NCOs and you let them take care of you. Best advice I ever got. Good people, quality people have lifted me up. Nothing on that resume bio you read did I do alone.
Well, we, are delighted that you took the time to come and talk to us. And again, I think we need to give him a big round of applause. Now, I know that Dr. Smith has to leave. We need to talk to our members about for our next meeting. So you may go. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, let's stay.
Siobhan she's busy getting. Our next meeting will not be here in the library. Our meeting in May is going to be at a private residence. And so we have to do a little finagling so that we get everybody who wants to attend this meeting out to the private residence. Siobhan, I think, is the one who thought that possibly, since this private residence is more than, about 2 miles west of 90th Street, off of Hamilton Road, that it might be comfortable for some of you, if you want to attend, to meet here at the library. But now that Siobhan is here, I will turn this over to Siobhan.
No, I really don't think you need me, but if you do, I will be here at 5 o'clock. But it is a right turn and a left turn. It is about as simple as you get. You're gonna go down to 90th Street West, you're gonna make a right, you're gonna go up about 2 miles to Hamilton Road, you're gonna make a left, and you're gonna go all the way down about 1.5 miles until the road dead ends. You'll be on a dirt road, and there you are right at her house. So it really is a right and a left, but I will be here at 5 o'clock.
Tell us about.
Chris is really interesting, and I wish I could remember the word that she used. It was something along the lines like linkage.
Passing through, just passing through.
What was the name for the art? I think she called it linkage. Is that what she called it?
Yeah, I think so. It's so beautiful.
So it is, what she has done is she has created all of these 3-dimensional art projects that she has picked up with things from passing through life and picking up things. And for those of you, like Don, you have a real eye for seeing something in 3 dimension and piecing it together. You will find this fascinating. It will appeal to you. For Dolores who sews, those things will appeal to you. For me, I'm just dumber than a box of rocks, but it really appealed to me too. So I think there's enough for everybody to go out there and just be fascinated with how she has pieced together these things. She's made a beautiful wall, and how she has taken cleaning up the desert, being aware of surroundings, and creating just beautiful, beautiful artwork. And Terry, you will love her. Those of you that I apparently around a lot of very artistic people. I don't know how this has happened. But you will be amazed at what she has done. So I would encourage you to do it. We will have some pictures in the newsletter that will give you a little bit better of an idea, but you really have to be there to see it. And so, Gretchen, and I will be here at 5 o'clock in case anybody wants to follow.
Are you gonna leave at 5, or are you gonna leave a little after?
I'm gonna leave about 5:05, no. And what I'll do, I won't publish this on the news, out on Facebook, but we will put it in our newsletter. I'll put my phone number on there, so if somebody says, I'm running late, can you hold on and wait?
No.
No.
That's a terrible idea.
Well, it'll be just in the newsletter, not on the.
Any other questions? I have not been out, so I'm excited about going out and seeing. And the gal's name is Chris Fergosa.
Well,
And she's quite an artist.
her professional name is Chris Holiday,
Oh, her professional name is Chris Holiday. Okay.
and her married name is Fergosa.
Anyway, I think this is going to be different. It'll kind of be like a field trip. All right. Again, thank you all for coming. There's still some cookies I see over there. And we do need to get the chairs put up. So, thank you again. See you next month.